Consultants on Call, Solving Organizational Communication Problems. Welcome to the Paula at Mercy Hospital case study by SunGroup. Over the next few minutes, we will discuss various aspects of this case study and our recommendations. But first, let's meet the team. Meet the SunGroup team. Shelby Fulton, Strategic Solutions Consultant. Shelby brings 2 years of professional experience in customer service, specializing in client communication and reception management. She is skilled in handling high-volume phone interactions, providing administrative support, and maintaining a welcoming environment for clients and colleagues alike. Natalie Charukian, Lead Research Consultant. Natalie has over 30 years of forensic accounting and business consulting, servicing clients in various industries from California to New York.
So for the case overview, this case focuses on Paula, who is a first-year emergency medical resident. She is warned about Dr. Phyllis May, that she is an amazing surgeon, but she can be ruthless and cruel to everyone. On Paula's first day working at Mercy Hospital, Dr. Phyllis May cuts off Paula when she was explaining the case, saying, "Dear God, woman, your voice is utterly annoying. Just stop talking." Then, during observing surgery, Paula asks a question. Dr. Phyllis proceeded to yell at Paula to get out and threw something over her head. Paula ran out of the room. Now, to dig into this case even deeper, Natalie will talk about key concepts.
Thank you. On this slide, we're highlighting the key concepts that explain the communication breakdown in this case. So according to Chapter 13.1, Aggression in the Workplace, workplace aggression includes patterns such as verbal abuse, humiliation, and psychological manipulation. Dr. May's behavior aligns closely with these forms of aggression. And to the right that we have over here is what I have included, Table 13.2, Buss's typology, which describes 3 dimensions of the workplace aggression that are physical, verbal, active, passive, and indirect aggression. Dr. May engages in active verbal aggression through belittling remarks and harsh criticism, but she also uses indirect passive aggression by withholding support and isolating Paula. So this combination is exactly what Buss categorizes as high-risk aggressive patterns. Chapter 13.2, Dysfunctional Organizational Behaviors, explain that these behaviors contribute to what they call employee abusive organizational patterns, where aggression is not just individual, but becomes embedded in communication systems. This is reinforced in the case by the OR's team being silent. In section 13.3 on communication climate and deviance, the authors in Wrench et al. Note that when coworkers fail to respond to aggression, their passive behavior actually strengthens the aggressor's power and worsens the climate. That's exactly what happens here. By not intervening, Paula's colleagues communicate that hostility is acceptable. Together, these concepts show that Dr. May's behavior is not an isolated incident, but is part of a broader pattern of aggression, impression management, and climate breakdown that our book identifies as foundational elements of a toxic workplace communication. And next, I will turn it over to Shelby, who will discuss the analysis of communication strategies.
So as Natalie talked about in the key concepts, verbal aggression is the communication at play in the workplace. But if we want to ask why verbal aggression is at play, looking at the dark triad, which is found in chapter 13.3 of our book, may help. For the dark triad, we have machiavellism, narcissism, and psychopath. Narcissism is a personality type where the person finds emotions insignificant in relationships. They don't care about the social norms and they see others in a logical viewpoint. Dr. Phyllis May shows personality traits of Machiavellism by not caring about her coworkers or the residents. By giving verbal aggression shows she doesn't care about hurting someone's feelings. She also finds residents as people there to learn, not to speak, but to observe. Then we have narcissism, which is when a person has a raised sense of how important they are. They want attention and have no sympathy. Due to Dr. Phillips being an amazing surgeon, it can be possible that she's got a high sense of her worth, meaning she finds it okay to verbally assault people because she is so important. Then psychopathic trait is when they have increased spontaneous tendencies, lack of anxiety or worry. They are bold, detached, and they can do no wrong. This could explain why Dr. Phyllis want to extreme measures to throw something at Paula. The doctor sees that this behavior won't get her in trouble. She does not care for the consequences, nor does she care for how it will affect Paula. Now on to our outcomes and lessons learned.
Thank you, Shelby. So on this slide, we're looking at the outcomes of Dr. May's behaviors and the broader lessons we can take from this case. According to Chapter 13.4, Outcomes of the Dark Side, persistent aggression leads to emotional exhaustion, fear, and reduced self-confidence. All outcomes Paula clearly experiences. Bullying affects not only the target's well-being, but also their ability to perform under pressure, which is definitely critical in a surgical environment. At the team level, Chapter 13.3 employee deviance and climate explains that communication deteriorates when employees fear retaliation. Silence becomes a form of complicity and is noted as the climate of inaction because it increases risk when staff no longer feels psychologically safe enough to speak up or correct errors. Now, at the organizational level, we describe how cultures inadvertently normalize abusive behavior when leadership fails to intervene. These parallels, the parallels in this case, where we have the lack of accountability that signals to staff that aggression, even dangerous aggression, is tolerated. And from these outcomes, several lessons emerge. First, as Section 13.5 emphasizes, workplace aggression does not self-correct. It escalates without structural intervention. Second, psychological safety must be intentionally built. Our textbook highlights that silence protects the aggressor, not the organization. And lastly, we stress the need for clear reporting structures and follow through to ensure staff trust that concerns will be taken seriously. Overall, we see that this case illustrates exactly what the textbooks describes. Individual bullying becomes a systemic communication failure when cultural norms, climates, and leadership do not actively interrupt the cycle.
Yeah, now to connecting to the other chapters. First, we have H's in Squat's identity, culture, and image from chapter 8. With bullying occurring at the workplace, it's about time until this becomes a norm for all employees, making the worker's identity work as a stressful environment. The culture will become one that is negative, aggressive, and poor teamwork. Patients will start seeing this culture as a negative one that they don't want to support. Then we have stress from chapter 8. With bullying happening in the workplace, this can cause stress in the workplace. A few organizational stressors at play are random interruptions, mistrust in coworkers, unclear policies, and lack of communication. And the last is increased chance of voluntary disengagement due to bullying at play. And then, Natalie, can you talk about some of our recommendations?
Yes. So I'll begin with my recommendations. We apply the frameworks in Chapter 13 to propose solutions that improve safety, communication, and culture at Mercy Hospital. First, implementing a formal anti-bullying policy aligns directly with Chapter 13.2, dysfunctional organizational behaviors. That chapter states that organizations need clear definitions, documentation process, and consequences to interrupt abusive communication patterns. A structured policy sets expectations for everyone, including surgeons, and reduces ambiguity around acceptable behavior. Second, requiring leadership and communication training is supported by the textbook's discussion in 13.3 of organizational climate. We emphasize that leaders strongly shape communication norms. Training surgeons and supervisors in emotional regulation, constructive feedback, and conflict management helps prevent escalation and reinforces consistency in high stress environments. And finally, Chapter 13.4 of Outcomes highlights the importance of early intervention and follow up after aggressive incidents. Paula should receive HR led debriefings, psychological safety check ins, and formal documentation of what occurred. We go on to explain that without meaningful follow through, harmful behaviors become embedded in the culture and more difficult to change. Together, these recommendations align with the textbook's argument that preventing workplace aggression requires structural clarity, strong leadership modeling, and ongoing support systems. Shelby?
So for my recommendations, I'm recommending providing support for reporters of bullying. It's important to make sure that the people who report bullying won't get bullied in return for doing so. Then providing employees with assistant programs to help provide support for mental and emotional stress in or outside of work. Bullying can happen outside of work too, and due to bullying causing stress, it is important to have assistant programs. Then the last is to have see something, say something, and open door policy to encourage employees to say something if they see something, and to have a policy where employees can talk to anyone on the hierarchy chain. I work at Costco, and they have both these policies, and due to this, it makes me feel that everyone can support each other, no matter how high or low they are on the hierarchy chain. Now, Natalie, will you talk about our visual summary?
Yes, thank you, Shelby. So for our visual summary, we're using figure 13.7 to the left, which is extreme careerism. Illustrates how aggression escalates in organizations when individual behaviors interact with contextual variables. Section 13.2 on impression management explains that individuals may use negative impression management tactics such as blaming, discrediting, or intimidation to maintain status or control. Dr. May displays several of these type of behaviors, particularly discrediting Paula and using intimidation as a power tactic. On the left side of the model, the contextual variables like accountability and cultural norms reflect what Chapter 13.3 Organizational Climate describes as conditions that either enable or inhibit aggression. In this case, the OR environment is high pressure, and the absence of accountability allows Dr. May's behavior to go unchecked. The individual variable box reflects what we refer to as personal dispositions towards political behavior and ambition. These traits can intensify aggressive communication when the environment rewards control over collaboration. When we look at the outcomes box, we highlight that aggression produces individual level effects like fear and burnout, group level effects like communication breakdown, and organizational level effects like cultural normalization of abuse, which all of these appear in this case. Altogether, this model does show that Dr. May's actions fits a predictable pattern described in Chapter 13, where aggression escalates when individual behavior interacts with permissive cultural and contextual factors. And I'm going to turn it over to Shelby. She will discuss our key takeaways.
Yeah, so I have my first key takeaway. I have bullying can cause stress, which leads to low morale, lack of confidence, and burnout. With Paula experiencing bullying. This is most likely to cause her high levels of stress from feeling on edge to not observing surgery. And my next key takeaway is a dark triad, which can explain traits for lack of empathy, sympathy, and worry. Dr. Phillips having some dark triad traits, it can explain why she felt it was appropriate to bully another. Now, Natalie's going to explain the other three.
Thank you, Shelby. So to expand on these final key takeaways, this case demonstrates what we emphasize. When aggression goes unchecked, it does escalate. What begins as verbal belittling transforms into emotional harm. And in this case, even physical danger, as we saw and the scalpel throwing incident. The textbook section on 13.3 of Communication Climate explains that silence is one of the main factors that sustains aggression. When employees stay quiet out of fear, the aggressor gains more power and the target becomes increasingly isolated. Exactly what we saw happen to Paula. Finally, as highlighted in the organizational culture chapter, leadership accountability is essential. When leaders fail to intervene, harmful behaviors become normalized, shaping a culture where aggression is seen as part of how things work. And this undermines morale, collaboration, trust, and patient safety. Overall, the case reflects the central point of Chapter 13. Communication, climate, and leadership interact to shape whether an organization becomes healthy and supportive or aggressive and unsafe.
Yeah, so for MLA references, we just used the book this week.
Yes, thank you. We hope you enjoyed our presentation and working alongside us this term. Thank you for watching our final presentation. Bye-bye.